Yeah, hi everybody. Theo Cedar Jones from the Wood Street community, which is in West Oakland. And I don't know if you guys have any familiarity with this situation here, but we're the largest homeless encampment in Northern California. And we're one of the first to get organized internally as of last year. And we started to have weekly meetings of the residents here in March last year. And by April, we had the city council person, Carol Fife, visiting us at on our turf, as it were. And the city administrator, Latanda Simmons, came down, and we started to develop a form of diplomacy based on the fact that we have so much land down here that we're able to create gathering areas, common areas, to host dignitaries, as it were, and to host parties and music events and open mics. And I developed a form of architecture using stretch fabric that enables us to create a shelter or a sun canopy for these larger common areas. And having the ability to assemble and to gather on open areas of land or dirt has empowered us in a unique way and given us some unprecedented breakthroughs politically, to the point where we've had meetings with state level executives of Caltrans, with a city administrator, a city council person, and this enabled us to use our leverage from diplomacy, from street level protest, and other forms of pressure to stop from being evicted last year in July. And there's two areas of land. One is controlled by the city of Oakland and the other by Caltrans. And we're kind of fighting a two-front war. And right now, Caltrans is threatening to evict anywhere from 100 to 200 people from the 29 acres of land because of the issue of fire. And so we've had a rash of fires. Many suspicious fires have happened here in the last year and a half, some of which we could trace to our residents, causing, but other times we believe there's outside forces that are starting these fires and trying to use that as a reason to evict everybody. So we have started to use temporary restraining orders against Caltrans. And we got a hearing with the top ranking US district judge in San Francisco at the federal level. And she was able to give us extra time to try to move our tiny homes in such a way that they would not be demolished by Caltrans. And we are in a pitched battle right now to prevent Caltrans from steamrolling our lives once again and dispersing our community, destroying the connections we've made with each other and with the land. And we are coming to realize that there is an unconstitutional violation of our rights to land and property taking place, that we have the constitutional right to life, liberty, and estate. So we should not have our property or our land arbitrarily deprived of us by the state without due process. And we see that the cities of California have created these injunctions against overnight camping, which is an unwarranted abridgment of our constitutional right to surplus land, public land, for those most in need. And we are creating a land trust based on the idea of the commons. And in the European tradition, the commons was a social contract amongst peers to be stewards of the land and not to sell it on the open market, but to keep it for the next generation's use. And so we're creating a commons land trust to acquire this surplus land in the city of Oakland. And the city of Oakland owns 10,000 acres of surplus land. And we want first right of refusal to this land. And we only need anywhere from 500 to 1,000 acres to house every homeless person in Oakland in tiny home eco villages and with cooperative community and small businesses and self-sufficiency and self-governance. And so we believe we are on the edge of a solution to homelessness based on land stewardship and land sovereignty. And it's not about housing. They try to constantly deflect this issue onto housing is the solution, but actually land sovereignty, we believe, is our solution. And we're fighting to keep this land and have time and a chance to prove our model. And of course, to stand in total solidarity with People's Park, which has been near and dear to my heart since I was an undergraduate at Berkeley. And I participated in many protests in favor of keeping People's Park for the people as a commons. You know, that's a classic example of the commons. And I even organized a rock and roll concert of local bands there in 1997, and called the Dingus Festival. And we rented land from the city of Berkeley. We rented the stage at People's Park for a day. And People's Park is symbolic of our struggles. And we must do everything we can to preserve that beautiful, beautiful little park. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're just doing like breakout group style. So, you know, trying to create more of a conversation. So if anyone has anything you want to say, any questions, anything, like feel free. People on Zoom, y'all can unmute too. Yeah.
I'm kind of in the corner, but I was gonna ask Theo if you could give more information on how this land trust process is going with the city of Oakland, and if they're even willing to be in conversation with y'all, or how did y'all even think about that idea in the first place?
Well, we got the idea initially from the Ohlone Indians, who have suffered the extremes of genocide and 95% depopulation of their original land and territory and people. And then most of the rest of the Ohlone people were enslaved in the Spanish missions in Dolores and Fremont. And there were these heroes of the Indian people like Telejuac and Stanislaus, who would go and raid the Spanish missions and the Catholic mission and free their people from enslavement. And that's what we're having to do now. Is we have formally given our proposal to the city of Oakland last year on July 15th. We had the one of the people from Human Services, a city council person, city administrator, and somebody from the community and housing development part of the city come down to us, to our common area, which we call the all or none patio. And they gave us their proposal, which is temporary housing and hotels and their pallet shelters and a lot of very grim kinds of options that don't provide cooperative community, they don't provide stability, they don't provide land stewardship. And we laid out our entire proposal to them. So they are well aware of this land trust option, and that the precedent for it was set by the Ohlone Indians, who create a land trust called Segoria Te. And they have been rematriating little bits of their land in Vallejo, East Oakland, and West Oakland. And their plan is to rematriate the bones of their ancestors, which are held hostage at UC Berkeley and Kroger Hall in the basement, are 15,000 individuals, ancestral remains that were stolen from their ancestral lands down where the Strawberry Creek enters the bay. Wherever a creek hits the bay from the hills, there was a village, there was a shell mound, and there was a burial site for their ancestors. And all of those shell mounds were broken up with bulldozers, and the contents were literally crushed into aggregate for the pavement of the roads. So they took their ancestor bones and they either made them into pavement, or they took them into archival storage inside UC Berkeley. And I personally stand in solidarity with the Ohlone Indians, who set the example of recreating the idea of a land trust that is usually a nature conservancy and making it into a human or cultural conservancy. So we have the right to residential use of public land, so-called surplus land that's owned by the city of Oakland. And we need to rematriate, in a sense, the way the Ohlone Indians have done, and say, we have a multi-generational concern for this land. We want to be able to inhabit it the same way the Ohlone did, which is a multi-generational trust or a social contract that says, love thy neighbor, do no harm, take care of the land, and take care of each other. And though you cannot sell the land on the open market, you must pass it on to the next generation in a better condition than you found it. This is the fundamental way that humans have survived for millions of years, really. And we got to get back to that original focus on land and not just housing. And we're in the middle of the battle of our lives, and you all can get involved. We have regular Sunday open mics from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Cobb on Wood Village. And if you go down Grand Avenue in West Oakland, it hits Wood Street. And Wood Street is like the front lines of this new movement in the state of California, where encampments have become self-organized. You could not do this when people were just living on the curb in small groups, or even individuals just sort of easily crushed by the Department of Public Works, the CHP, the police, and Caltrans have been persecuting these people, our people, for decades, taking their property and destroying it, taking their means of survival and destroying it, and dispersing what little families of people get together to support each other, constantly breaking those bonds that people have with each other and with the earth. It is a continuation of the same genocide that has been hitting the Ohlone people for hundreds of years, and the Black Panthers also in West Oakland. That legacy was shattered by the same forces that engage us, called the Oakland Redevelopment Agency, which uses eminent domain to take the people's land and their housing and their property without due process. And all of that stuff is unconstitutional, and we need to re-embrace our original California state constitution from 1849 and see that we have been through a series of distortions and misuse of the law, of the courts, of capitalism, to destroy us, to destroy human life. And it really is the battle of a lifetime. If we can rematriate, or in the sense, reclaim our constitutional rights to a state, to property and land, we will put an end to these injunctions against overnight camping. We will undo the prison slave labor system that we are all feeding into. Where the homeless people are always going to be there because the state in its perverted form wants to create a pool of people that are available for the for-profit prison system, the for-profit slave labor in the prisons. And we need to cut that whole system down. It's not constitutional. All these laws and injunctions are fake, that say you can't sleep overnight in your city outdoors, or that the state has a right to exploit slave labor in the prisons. Has to stop. And all of this is subject to constitutional challenge in the courts. And we're learning how to represent ourselves to the judge, to learn the legal language that's been used against us and use it for our own empowerment. And take up where the Black Panthers left off, which is community self-defense and survival programs. Yes, there we go. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. Yes.
Yeah, anyone else?
And let me just give you my email. Anybody who wants to get involved down here as volunteers or to do music and art and live shows, I am Theo Cedar Jones at Gmail, TheoCedarJones at Gmail, and contact me. And we want to invite as many people as possible to come down here.
Yeah, thank you. I have another question. I was wondering if you could talk about how you organize, like how you are all able to make such like a successful organizing group with like including the unhoused people and the community that you're organizing with. Because at the park we do, like, obviously we include the unhoused people who live at the park in everything that we do. But a lot of the times, like, these people are facing a lot of other challenges that are outside of their control, like, substance abuse, like, obviously lack of housing and lack of a job is like enough on its own for
Right.
people to not have the capacity to engage in like organizing efforts, or not. A lot of people feel helpless. People have been unhoused for a long time and feel like
Yes.
they can't like get involved, things like that. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like how y'all were able to do that.
Well, that's such a good question. And I feel everything you said. There's all these things stacked against people having the extra time and energy to organize. And what we did is first we made an attractive, clean space for people to gather. And I used this 4-way stretch fabric to create very inexpensive, lightweight shelters. And we had to designate a space that was like, this is not residential space. This is for gathering of anybody and everybody. This is a common space. And it's sheltered from the sun. It's attractive. There's art. There's places to sit. There's places to just lounge around and enjoy each other. That gathering space is key to your organizational capacities. And then we have outdoor fires here. So we have campfire. You got to have a source of fresh wood. You've got to have some food to attract the people, and sometimes live music to attract the people. So you want to have some things that are attractive and draw the people in, because you really cannot get people organized if they're not attracted and feel like there's a safe space, a comfortable space to be. And then we went house to house, tent by tent, with a sheet of paper that had our talking points. No eviction, self-governance, self-sustainability, cooperative community, tiny home eco-village. We had clear, focused talking points. And pretty much 80–90% of the people here can relate and understand what we're doing and what we're offering. So you try to make your platform extremely clear and really useful to the people. And you got to outreach with a piece of paper, because people's phones and their electronic media are often compromised. They lose their phones, or they have issues keeping the phone. So you got to print stuff on paper and bring physical paper to people, and read it out loud on a PA system. So this thing of using a live PA and live music is a way to break those barriers and the resistance and the inertia that our people suffer from. They need to be sometimes stimulated and excited and motivated by a loud sound system, pumping music and pumping the voice of the people. And I'm into art and music. I have a rock band, Swaybone. I've been a struggling artist, musician for 35 years. I see that the role of theater in both attracting your constituency and then focusing that theatrical ability on live events or protests that are theatrical in nature have a unique, attractive force. Instead of us just being us versus them, it's more like we are the force of what's attractive just through our human personalities. We are attractive from our art and our music and our culture, and we're attracting everybody into being partners with us. So there's a certain unique approach that we've taken that is not so much based on the left versus right dichotomy or the class structure conflict. We kind of see ourselves as the leaders of society, that we have the skills of survival out on the street, out in the encampments, and we have an understanding of community from real life experience that is attractive. We use that force of attraction to organize people. And then that's I think what has helped us get this far.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any questions? Any thoughts?
Would you like to come play music at one of our events?
I certainly would. And boy, we've got some talented people here that I want to introduce you to. Yes. Yeah. So who can I contact about that?
Oh,
Probably
you
you
contact
could, me. I've been in contact with you already, I think.
Okay, I'll go through. And what's your name again?
Sorry, Violet.
Brian?
Violet.
Oh, Violet, Violet, of course, Violet, yes. Violet, I'm down. Yes, we want to connect. We've been doing another thing I want to mention is in May of last year, we started to use the Zoom meetings to have different encampments come together in a consortium.
Oh,
And then encampments started to work together across the state. You know, Emeryville, Berkeley, Oakland, Fresno, Sacramento, Santa Cruz, and then gradually expanding this network. And we realized that we were going to help each other through mutual aid. So when we were facing eviction, they would come from Sausalito and help us paint signs and help us get ready to face off against, you know, Caltrans or the city. And that meant so much to me. And it was so beautiful when encampments started to do mutual aid. And then we went out. Oakland has a weekly schedule of closure and sweeps of encampments. And we would get that schedule and we would go out there with our residents and also volunteers from the housed community. And we would face off against the police and the representatives of the city and say, no, you guys are not sweeping these people today. We know our rights and they're going to stay inside their domiciles and shut the door, and you better come back with a warrant. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. It's not going to happen that way. We're not going easily anymore. We're not going to be just swept away and crushed. And we have a right to exist. We have a right to gather and assemble. We have a right to speech and estate and property. Hear us, listen to us. This is the way it is. And that approach has resulted in 5 evictions being stopped completely. And they're getting desperate because they're now, you know, coming back with the cops, coming back with Caltrans workers by the dozens to, you know, steal our property, crush it, destroy it, intimidate us, and all the rest. But things are changing. I have to tell you, the strangest things happened down here. 2.5 weeks ago, I wake up in my van. I'm in my van right now. I look out the window and there's all these clean-cut politicians like milling around my van. I get dressed, I go out there real quick. I say, hello, I'm a member of the community. And they all start asking me questions. What do you think about this fire? You know, this fire that killed somebody. And I said, well, who are you? I said, oh, we're Governor Newsom's cabinet. What? And where's Governor Newsom? Well, he's right there. And what the fuck? There is Governor Newsom and his entire cabinet and the director of Caltrans, Tokes Omashaken. And I end up spending an hour with them touring Wood Street community, you know, and looking at the beauty, looking at the ugliness, talking about our talking points and telling them things like, you know, we're not homeless, we're landless. And I said, dear Governor, if you're going to sit in meetings where your stakeholders decide on our people's fate, you at least have to include representatives from our community at those meetings. And that seemed to like strike a chord inside the governor's head. And then we ended up walking together and he's asking me these funny questions like, where did you go to college? And I said, well, UC Berkeley. Is all that explains so much, you know, i.e. you freaky types, you know, you're always coming from Berkeley. And I said, well, where'd you go to college? He says, oh, San Francisco. And then he asked me, what did you get on your SATs? And I said, I got 1420. What did you get? He says, well, I only got 900. So you can't make this stuff up. There's something about this situation that we're in that's attracting the governor of the state of California to come down into the darkest, deepest depths of West Oakland, which, you know, it's never happened like that before. So watch this space. This is something's going on.
Yeah, maybe just like one more and then we can wrap it up.
Theo, I was wondering if you could specify some of your eviction defense strategies that y'all utilize to, you know, stop those 5 evictions from happening. You know, because with pending development on People's Park, you know, we want to make sure that we're prepared to not have that shit happen.
Yeah.
One of the things we've done is what we call cordiality, that we find out every person in the UC Berkeley system and the city government of Berkeley that are the decision makers about People's Park. Maybe this is something you've already figured out and you already have those relationships, but then you go and seek them out in their offices and you find, or you get them to come visit you at People's Park to have formal conferences where you've got food, you've got drink, you've got shelter from the sun, you've got chairs and seating, and you've got a PA so you could pass the mic. So what we did is we had a live PA and electricity, and we use live PA and electricity at eviction defense when they're already making a movement against you. And we use the PA at our cordiality meetings when we're inviting them to be with us as in a way that is civilized and respectful. And that really disarmed a lot of our opponents, because once they develop a human relationship with you, it's harder for them to stay aloof from your suffering. And it was exactly this kind of thing. We had developed a relationship with LaTonda Simmons, assistant city administrator in Oakland, who pulls the trigger on a lot of the evictions, okay? She has the power to decide who gets evicted in the city. And we had invited her to several meetings at our spot. And we had a humorous kind of back and forth with her where we would tease her, you know, but in a way that was not aggressive or like overly angry. You know, we would kind of modulate our emotions a little bit. And it was LaTonda Simmons who, at a meeting of the city and Caltrans and the Union Pacific Railroad, where they were going to decide on our eviction, we broke into their Zoom meeting at a street protest in front of Caltrans headquarters on June 22nd last year. And a voice at the other end of the Zoom meeting said, "Let's hear them out." And we did not know who said that. We did not know why they said that, but they ended up letting our resident, Lejeune Harper, who's a very strong woman, read on the vocal PA, that every useful PA system, the entire list of our grievances and demands to that Zoom meeting of the powerful, you know, in their ivory tower. And they ended up calling off that eviction in July. And the people at Wood Street Commons on the city side are still there today. And it was because we had that cordial relationship with a powerful person. And I would say is, you want to proactively build relationships with the people you least think you'd ever have a relationship with. If it's Governor Newsom, or it's Nancy Skinner, or it's Carol Fife, or it's who are the city council people of Berkeley, I don't even know. And sometimes the mayor won't talk to you, but one city council person will, or a city administrator, they'll talk to you, or somebody from waste management, or somebody from Department of Public Works. You work your way into their world and you develop human relationships with them. And I swear to you, it will pay political dividends.
Thank you.
Points. Yeah. Violet, do you want to ask yours?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I had a short one and then a slightly longer one, is that okay?
Yeah,
I
it's
can just do
fine.
just the short.
Yeah,
one.
we
Okay.
could probably go to like 7.
Okay, and the really short question was, are you still doing those Zoom meetings with the other encampment?
Yes. So we have a Signal application. The Signal app is what we use for our encrypted text communication. And there, if you get on Signal, you guys can join the thread called Solidarity Coalition of California.
Oh, it's
And,
that.
and yes, yes. And we need to constantly revive that process because everybody gets bogged down in their local issues. And it's really easy it's hard to keep that larger solidarity together. But I tell you, the moment we did that, it was just days or weeks later that suddenly we had an audience with a state level executive of Caltrans, Jeannie Ward Waller. And when you go federal or you go statewide, it triggers some kind of something in the nervous system of the power structure. And suddenly you get to talk to people you didn't talk to before.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, it'd be great to be in those conversations, sorry. But what else? Yeah, oh, I guess the other question was just, in terms of other like, eviction defense strategies, do you have specific ones for on the ground? You talked about like knowing your rights. And like, yeah, and the temporary restraining order?
Yeah, so the TRO, the temporary restraining order, is something that you can use in your jurisdiction. So we brought TROs against Caltrans and it ended up going federal. So we got an audience with a US District Court Judge Chesney and the 19th floor of the San Francisco Federal Building because Caltrans is a state agency. And you can also get temporary restraining orders and they just buy you time and they slow them down. And they get them into a legal theater where they have to justify their actions. And we need to start building a case for the constitutional rights to estate and property and land. And when you get them in that theater of the Superior Court or the District Court or the Ninth Circuit, these are all potential opportunities to start to create the grounds for a constitutional challenge to every injunction against overnight camping in every city in the state of California. That's like the broader, bigger strategy. But here's one of the things is getting the residents who are so-called homeless into relationships with volunteers from the housed community and get them work side by side to do eviction defense and look at the schedule, that's coming down from the city as to when they're going to do closures and organize those relationships between the housed and the unhoused, because there's a unique kind of power that comes from a good solid relationship of solidarity between the housed and the unhoused. And some of our volunteers from the housed community have been exemplary, stellar advocates on the front lines. It gives us a certain legitimacy. It gives us extra weight to our grievances. And again, I would say we take a relationship approach to politics. You build relationships with your opponent, and you build relationships with the people who are in the housed community who might not otherwise have an entree into the homeless community. And you're building relationships is one of the ways to consider this eviction defense strategy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much, Theo. That was like super, super insightful. And I think all of us want to like definitely connect with you more, connect with Wood Street more and other encampments and stuff like that.
Yes,
So we will,
yes.
Yeah, I'll definitely be in touch with you as well.
Thank you, Violet, and for this wonderful opportunity to reach out. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much
Cool,
for coming
okay.
out.